do it and see what it's like. And anyhow, so any other questions on the budget? Okay, moving forward, item number 3, the caucus process.
So, Mr. Chair, and you can speak to this since you were at the meeting yesterday. We sent you a memo link last week. Reminded you that part of the way the caucus process works is you discussed and created the caucus process late last year and then passed it in January. We agendized it for the council consideration because the council always has to review it and then pass it. It was item 5.1 on the council agenda yesterday, and they passed it. So that means your trigger is in place now to actually hold the caucuses. So you're legally now in play to hold the caucuses as you move into the next month or so.
The other thing on there was about term limits, where they reaffirmed that there are 2 term limits, and the pilot program counts as 1 term, and then they go up and say, and then also the 2 years after the pilot started until the caucus counts as a 2nd term, which is why us on the even number of districts, we are term limited out. And so suddenly we're short timers. I thought we had another term allowed, but we don't. So I have 2 more meetings here, and we'll have to find some candidates for our even numbered districts since not that many people had applied. Yeah, so.
I'm certainly saddened by that. I know that this has been a discussion the clerk's office and the attorney's office and our office has been having for the last couple of 2 or 3 months.
I was kind of startled by it, but yes.
And I know, Mr. Chair, you and I chatted about this on numerous occasions. And unfortunately, it kind of erred on it. And I think that part of what happened was you were caught up in the whole process of the board's reorganization, where they grandfathered people in. Just to remind you, the board, the clerk, and this has been, actually, the seating of the commissioners was delayed by a year while they were trying to figure out, looking at the 30 boards and commissions without going into an enormous amount of time of history of this. The long and the short of it is that there originally were, a few years ago, all different term limits for commissions. There were 2-year commissions, 3-year commissions, 4-year commissions. Now it's 4-year commissions for everybody. And with the neighborhoods commission, there was the pilot was extended several times. And so what originally started
was gaps between when it ended and then they started up again.
The original terms were 2 years, which turned into 4 years, which turned into 6 years. Yeah. And I know that, for some of you that our original commissioners who've been on for 7 years going on. And I think that the clerk in trying to make everything even just finally said, we're shutting it off. You're down to almost going on 8 years. I can't speak for the clerk, but this is what the decision that was made. So that's an unfortunate aspect of what has happened. On the other hand, certainly all the commissioners that were from the original pilot have done tremendous work, and greatly applaud that. I know you've been there from the beginning, and so unfortunately. All right. Aside from that, moving on.
There was also confusion as to whether the appointed commissioners in even-numbered districts would be.
Yeah, I got a message on that, and I'll clarify that with the clerk's office.
Because you want, so you had some comments on that, right?
Yeah, I spoke to the city clerk, and she said.
Yeah, I think the question was asked, and I had to leave early. Well, not early. It was actually 6:15. So. But the question that was asked was, it really has to do with unexpired terms. Some of you, when we were looking at the dates on the commission terms, some of you were appointed to fill unexpired terms, and that simply meant that in some cases you were appointed, if it's a 3-year term or a 4-year term or whatever, you can serve up to 2 years or 3 years of an unexpired term. Does that mean that you don't have a full term? And I think what I need to clear with the clerk's office is, what does that mean in relation to your being appointed for potentially another 2 terms? Because the way that it's set up now is, does that count as a term? Or does that count as, does then that not qualify you to have your own terms?
Well, that wasn't really the issue. The question was, I mean, the statement from the dais was that there were only 6 people had to go through a caucus process. And since there are 5 districts with 2 in each one, there should be 10 people with the caucus process.
No, I think.
And they were saying that, 4 people have been appointed, therefore they do not have to go through the caucus process. That was what needed to be clarified.
I'll have to look at that. Like I said, I had to leave early. I'm not sure what that's about.
So that's what he was responding to.
Yeah, and I had spoken to the city clerk, and she disagreed with that. She said she had the documentation, and she just couldn't pull it out.
I'm terribly confused, I have no
Me
clue
too.
what you're talking about, I think it affects correctly, so I'd like some clarification.
I think we're diverging on terms as opposed to the caucus process. So let's go back to the caucus process, and then we can go off pipeline about this, because that's a different discussion.
So the bottom line is, if you're an even numbered district and you have not been termed out, then you need to go through a caucus to come back on again. Whether you went through a caucus once before
Right.
or were appointed, so even numbered districts go through caucus.
Is that related to the current caucus process?
Yes,
Right, so,
because in some districts,
Yeah.
even numbered
We have
districts,
some.
if they were both appointed, they would not have a caucus
Okay.
process unless that was clarified.
Well, some of us were elected already, we're elected, and
And you're
like
from an odd
me, for instance, I will have my 8 years,
Yes.
so that means I will be termed out. Am I correct?
No, but you're in an odd numbered district, so you have 2 more years.
Pardon?
You are from an odd numbered district.
I will have 8 years served in August, I believe.
see, we're getting into terms.
He's not eligible
Let's
according to
move
this.
Move on.
past the
Yeah,
terms.
okay, so any other questions
Yeah.
related to this?
Let me go back to the caucuses.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So commissioners that are in the even districts, most of you have sent me ideas for location. So I'm gonna follow up with that now that we have the dates. And I'll be, I think Linda, you wanted to talk, I'll go out and talk to you about that. I'll reach out with the library about that, or if you can ask them again and say I'll be contacting them. Some of you, I've already been contacted by one librarian. And so I'll be following up with the locations and a date for those. One of the things I think the mayor said yesterday, and which I've been meeting with internal staff about, is the outreach effort for this. So let me tell you, I created some slides, and one of them has the caucus process timeline in here. So just, let's go over that. So let me preface that by, there was a boards and commissions fair this afternoon. And that meant that members of the public came here to City Hall, and if they were interested in commissions, they came and asked questions of staff as to what's involved. And so actually, I had about 10 people come up and ask me about the Neighborhoods Commission. 2 of them were actually interested in applying for the vacancies in District 1 and District 7. So, because we've got Joe's seat that's empty, and we've also got Moses' seat that's empty in District 7. I explained to them that fill out your application now. I had several members that came in that District 5, not District 5, someone that knew you on. I think it may have been District 4, but they said that they talked to you. Anyway, I said, please fill out your application and apply for the caucus and walk them through that. So this coming Friday, we're opening up the applications for the caucus process, both from the neighborhoods, registration for neighborhood groups, as well as advertising potential candidates. We'll be putting it on the city's webpage. We'll be developing a flyer that'll go out to the council offices so that they can send it out to their listing of neighborhood groups. We'll probably create a flyer that'll be put in libraries and other places for people that are interested in applying. And then we'll also put it on Nextdoor. And we're going to do a really robust effort to try to get candidates. Those are residents that are interested in applying. They don't have to belong to a neighborhood group, but they have to live within the boundaries of the council district. And so be on the alert for that. We'll send it out to all of you also then. Even though you don't reside in necessarily the districts, you'll see what it looks like then. So the Neighborhoods Commission application submission deadline is May 3rd. I believe that's a Monday. So it's about 3 weeks for people to apply. Once you get an application, if you're a candidate, we'll contact the clerk, we'll forward over the application to me, and then we'll contact you and ask you to put together a 200-word statement. And I'm Linda Locke, and I'm interested in applying for the commission for the blah-de-blah-de-blah, okay? That'll be in the brochure booklet that's available for the caucus itself. The caucus scheduling will run from May 9th through June 1st. That doesn't mean they're going to happen on those dates. That means that's the window in which we'll put together the 5 caucuses. And they'll be happening within that time period. And there'll be anywhere from Saturdays to Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Try to avoid Fridays. Nobody ever wants to do anything on a Friday. But we'll schedule them and let you know, because we'll be needing commissioners that are not running for office to be part of the process by helping out if we can. And then once we get the names done, they go through the attorney's due diligence, then we'll forward the names sometime in June. The last council meeting in June, I believe, is June 28th. We have until that time to forward the names forward so that the council can take action on it and appoint all the new commissioners. And then the new commissioners will be sworn in either during the summer or in a mass swearing in at the first meeting in August then. So I'll stop there for a second. That's the timeline. Yes?
Can I ask one question? People, Maria Arnold, District 2, people who vote at this caucus,
Yes.
it was a big deal at the ones that we've gone to. We can't have like a whole neighborhood come out and vote. They have to be delegates
Right.
of each individual neighborhood,
Right.
like a neighborhood association. Everybody knows that. Huh?
Right, and we're going to post the new rulings. Amelia will be posting the new rulings on the clerk's webpage. Now that we've got it approved by the council, we'll put the new rules and regulations up on so people can see it. But Commissioner Arnold is absolutely correct. We will be contacting all the registered neighborhood associations in each of the affected council districts and asking them for the names of their delegates. And each of the neighborhood associations can have up to 3 delegates. So if you have 10 neighborhood associations, potentially you can have 30 voting members. That doesn't mean members of the public can't come or members of other the associations can't come, because the way this is a vital democratic process is that even though they can vote, and only they can vote for each of the folks that is being considered for appointment to the commission, there is a part of the process where after they do answer the questions, there is the actual caucus itself, where some of those who've gone through the process, the room wherever the meeting is held, any member of the public and or other members of the neighborhood groups can go up and talk to you and say, Commissioner Locke, you were talking about sidewalks being a priority, say more about that. And even though they're not voting members, they could go back to their voting members and say, I really like her, and that's the democratic process. Or members of the public can come up and talk to you. And even though they can't vote, they'll have an opportunity to see how you feel about things. So that's the dynamic part of the whole process. And what makes this a really unique, first, only of its kind in the nation as far as I'm aware, that adds vitality to the process. So there you go. And just a reminder, the council offices, although they can advertise for this, are prohibited from doing any selection of candidates. They can attend it, but they play no process. It's driven by the commission. It's driven by the neighbors. They can't even provide food. We don't want them to sway any member of the public one way or the other. So, there you go.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next item is standing reports.
Jeff, hold on. I realized as a tag along to this, one of the things that the vice chair has, Commissioner Maitland, is the communications document that he wanted to make available. The reason I think this is important is that as you do outreach for the whole caucus process, as you kind of, try to talk to your neighbors about participating in this, or even coming to observe it, because it does happen every couple of years. It might be an important document to have in hand so that you get ideas of how to reach out further, because not all of the commissioners, and I'll be quite honest, are all created equal. That simply means that some are better at communication than others. And this is a document that's been created by the commission over years, and it might be a handy tool for you to have in hand as you kind of try to figure out how to reach out to people during this process. So, Commissioner?
I would add that what is being passed around is not the entire document. This is the new section that's being added in the document and updating it. Very soon I will be giving the electronic copy of the complete document to Ernest, and he'll provide it to everybody, but I wanted to be able to provide this to people so you can look at it and pick out specifically the new things. See if there are things that, when we come to a meeting and we have a discussion on approval of the full document, if there are things that are missing, then we will be prepared to talk about it. So this is an update.
Right, so we'll send you the electronic version once we get that, so you'll have it in hand for your library then.
We have a couple more here.
Yeah. So sorry, I almost forgot that. I want to make sure I squeeze that in as part of what they want.
I have an extra one.
Okay. Well,
I think everybody has it.
yeah, I brought enough for more
So,
than everybody.
That's the update on the caucus process. Congratulations to the commission. And for Chair Ames, Matt was there also to wait for a very long council meeting to get to that item to make comments then, so.
Yeah, that one went till 6:30, started at 1:30, went to 6:30, but fireworks was important, and also.
North San Jose Development and,
But also, then